Liz with Dimir Shadow. A lot of times these fair decks have struggle against lands, though of all the ones that do, I think I give Shadow some of the best odds.
I don't know, it's pretty tough. Grove of the Burnwheel is just really good against Death Shadow. It's tough. Everyone just happy to be here.
Yeah.
I mean, can you blame them? After that win last round, it's hard not to feel excited. I'm still coming down from it, and it was an hour ago.
I talked with Jacob before that round. That's how they're doing, and he told me, yeah, we just got knocked out of the tournament and then walked away. So how about going from that?
The top 8
oh,
photo.
Yeah.
Oh, he knows.
To going from that to thinking, wait, you spend an hour thinking you've been eliminated from the tournament, and then you aren't, and then you're in top 8.
Oh, these are the bonus rounds.
They are the 7th seed, so they'll be on the draw as we start off here. Sky Marcher Aspirant from Hagen. Oddly enough, it's one of those matchups where the aggro deck gets better after game 1, which is kind of counter to how you normally think things go.
Right, Kaya's Wrath is just so strong here, but there are a lot of tools in the Azorius deck that are very strong here. We see this Adana Vanguard coming down, which is absurd against Kaya's Wrath. Traditional removal just isn't going to cut it against this, Dauntless Bodyguard, Hunted Witness, Legion's Landing, etc.
Yeah, we see a 2-mana removal spell, but it's cast down from Rianhard. That forces him to go after the Sky Marcher Aspirant, whereas something like Moment of Craving would be required to take care of the Adanto Vanguard.
Right, and earlier we saw Kane with all these cards to the effect of Thought Erasure that are very good in your grindy mirrors, but they're not very well suited for these very aggressive starts.
And Hagen stuck on 2 lands, but has a pair of Adanto Vanguards. He's attacking into 4 mana. Now, I am looking at Rianhard's deck. I'm looking for Settle the Wreckage, Moment of Craving, Vrasa's Contempt, things that doesn't care about Indestructible.
Well, we have 2 Moment of Craving. That pause was for a period.
All right. There are 3 Vrasa's Contempts.
Correct.
And Kane had held up the mana for it, but was not able to convert. He dropped to 9 on the attack, but was able to negate a History of Benalia.
That's a big play. It's very hard to actually get value out of your negates in this matchup.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the mono-white aggro deck has a lot of creatures.
A swing, and we see Vrasa's Contempt bring Kane up to 11, then he goes down to 8 on the attack. And a pretty stocked hand here for Jacob. You have Snubhorn Sentry, Dauntless Bodyguard, Hunted Witness, and Pass. Now, his last 2 cards here, he has a Venerated Luxodon in hand, and it looks like a Deputy of Detention.
And this is the battlefield I'm talking about. What does Kaya's Wrath do here?
Right, there's 2 creatures.
It kills 1 creature.
Yeah, 1.5. You're in a spot which is pretty difficult.
Yeah, exactly. There's just not very much that your traditional sweeper is going to accomplish on this battlefield.
Now, what do you make of this? So it looks like there is a Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, in Kane's hand, but didn't actually cast it here, almost as though he is trying to bluff. And it looks like last other card's Vrasa's Contempt, okay?
Exactly. There's not much bluff equity to be had when deck lists are face up.
Yeah. Legion's Landing from Hagen. Even through the Contempt, he has 3 attackers. He'll be able to transform that into a Adanto.
And being able to flip Adanto, or transform that card into Adanto the First Fort, is one of the most important aspects of this matchup, because it means you don't have to play cards from your hand anymore in order to generate resources in the form of pressure.
Yeah, there aren't any copies of Field of Ruin in this Esper control deck, so that's just going to keep working for the game.
Exactly. Without something Field of Ruin, the Assassin's Trophies we see out of the Sultai deck, and so forth, this is here for the rest of this game.
An attack and a transform is going to be 3 damage. Evan down to 7. That Sentry does not actually attack yet for damage. It does not have the City's Blessing, but will soon. Now, Kane's last card there was a copy of Teferi. Draws for the turn and then draws for Teferi, finds 2 more. He does find his 3rd and final copy of Vrasa's Contempt, but without a land drawn there, he's going to have to wait a turn to cast it.
Right. It looks like he has a Mortify hanging out in his hand, but if we're being honest, which one of these creatures do you kill? It's not actually accomplishing very much for your 3 mana investment. This is what the Azorius aggro deck tends to capitalize on so well, is these are all just favorable mana exchanges.
And I'm actually pretty interested to see where Hage goes with some of these attacks, whether they're upstairs or whether he addresses the Teferi at all. I somewhat suspect he won't.
Upstairs!
Yeah, you don't want to take the fight of giving your opponent 5 more life.
I want to take the fight to my opponent's jaw.
3 manas, Deputy of Detention. That is quite the answer for Teferi.
Kane's welcome to mortify this if he likes.
Yeah, but he may, that means he's not mortifying an attacker if he does that, right?
Exactly, and all it takes is Hage playing one more card to gain the City's Blessing for this Snubborn Sentry.
And he's going to mortify the Dauntless Bodyguard. That will give Snubborn Sentry indestructible. And it looks like Kane's going to choose to do that just in case something like a City's Blessing could happen here with another Legion's Landing.
This is a very heads-up play, actually, because there's a chance that, let's say this Deputy of Detention resolves and Kane wants to respond to the next card. Hage could just play a land, and it's a way that gains the City's Blessing without using the stack.
Right. So a swing for 2. That's all the power in play for Hage. He'll put Whitehouse down to 5. Back to Rianhard we go. Vraska's Contempt plus the card he drew for the turn. He can get that Teferi back with the Contempt.
At this point, you're somewhat priced into doing that. It's both it's effectively the most power on the battlefield, right? Everything only has 1, but this one, there's a benefit to getting it off of the battlefield. And there's not much benefit to waiting until your opponent's turn. The reason we saw him go after the Dauntless Bodyguard last turn, Dauntless Escort, is there's just not anything that's going to get him back in this game short of a Kaya's Wrath. So at this point, he's just doing whatever he can to effectively gain life.
Right, and actually, so Vraska's Contempt takes care of the Deputy. He gets his Planeswalker back. The other card in Kane's hand actually is a Chemister's Insight, so he has just enough mana to convert that if he pluses the Teferi, which it feels like he has to, though. He's getting low on life points, to be sure.
What are you going to do? Minus it on a 1/1?
Yeah. Well, right, the scary thing is there's 3 power in play, but it's a good bet that Hage will be able to gain City's Blessing next turn.
Exactly. So we see 8 permanents on the battlefield. Hage just needs to play 2 cards.
And the draw off Teferi was Kaya's Wrath. Now, he's not going to get lands 3 and 4 until his end step, so he has to wait.
Just give it a second. Just give it a second.
Permanent number 9 from Hage is a Glacial Fortress. He has Venerated Loxodon in hand.
What he may end up doing here is just hard casting the Venerated Loxodon in order to apply pressure.
Yeah.
You don't really need to put more counters on your creatures that badly. You just need the City's Blessing to apply pressure right now.
Yeah, now he can also gain City's Blessing just by using Adonto. And I think looks like he's going to go for that instead.
This is incredible.
So, City's Blessing, he now has 6 power worth of creatures. It's almost enough. It'll put Kane down to 1, unless he wants to attack Teferi, and it looks like he's actually going to go for the Planeswalker.
Right, and this is the way that Hage doesn't immediately lose the game.
To Kaya's Wrath?
Right, so the plan here, we don't actually have that much resilience to Kaya's Wrath. The thing that we could have done is gone face, and then the Kaya's Wrath makes it, you end up with 2 tokens on the backs of these Hunted Witnesses. So that's a play I may have liked to see a little bit more from him.
End step Chemister's Insight there from Kane. And main phase, there's that 4 mana. Cannot Kaya's Wrath quickly enough. 2 Hunted Witnesses bring back 2 1/1s.
Getting those turned into humans. Or are they vampires?
There we go.
There we go. 1 Gerald Thompson enters the fray.
I think it's 2 Gerald Thompsons.
1 Gerald Thompson enters the fray.
And 1 Gerald Thompson.
Leave.
1 Gerald Thompson twin token. Swinging for 2. Kane down to.
And now we're going to see why this
6?
deck is able to hang so well. Is he's just going to get more tokens every single turn.
Precognitive Perception from Kane. He's going to cast that main phase, so he gets to scry 3 before drawing 3. He's at 4 right now. I'll correct that in a second.
We make all kinds of jokes about how 1/1s aren't actually very strong. But if you're not pressuring your opponent, these tokens are worth damage over the course of several turns, right? These were worth 1 damage each now. If they get to attack again, that means each token was a resource worth 2 points of damage, and every turn they stay on the battlefield is another point that they were effectively worth.
Swing in for 2. Kane down to 2. And moment of craving. Again, these incremental life gain keeping Kane slightly alive here. I believe he's at 4 again, then dropping to 2.
And it looks like he gained a couple of life points there from that moment of craving, keeping him barely in this game.
Right.
But he still has the mana to activate this Adanto.
Draws another moment of craving. That's going to
gosh.
buy him more turns.
This is all the Esper deck wants. This is how he wins this game.
Well, he doesn't have that card or engine yet. He's still looking for a Teferi or an Azcanta while he draws all this removal.
Just give it a second. It's coming.
It's coming.
Don't make it weird.
Right, he still has a jump start on that Chemist's Insight as Moment of Craving brings him back up to 6. But remember, early from the game, this Adanto continues to pump out 1/1s.
Right, and this is something that he's going to have to address at some point. It's very hard to actually just get through all of these because he doesn't have a permanent way to deal with all of them.
All right, Kane down to 3 on the attack. Jump starts that Chemist's Insight.
Ooh,
it's like a
the
land.
Best,
yeah.
And by that I mean worst, thought erasure of all time.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of matchup we're having. I believe it's a full playset in the main. It does start to hurt you in the long game.
Exactly. This is his main deck is set up to beat up on the Sultai decks, not these low-to-the-ground creature affairs.
Against 3 1/1s. Kane still needing to stabilize here. I believe he has an Absorb in his hand to gain life return, but there's nothing to absorb just yet.
Why would Hage cast a spell? He's ahead on the battlefield.
Yeah,
he can do an activated ability that puts him further ahead on the battlefield. There's just no upside to casting spells. Hagen's made it this deep into a tournament.
And that is a Thought Erasure, and Kane is going to counter his own Thought Erasure to gain 3 life.
I won't call it pretty, but you got to do what you got to do.
When your control opponent starts making plays like that, that's when you know that things are going well.
Oh, there's no way Hage doesn't smell blood.
Hage swings for 3. Mortify on a token. Rianhard down to 3. He burns a Mortify, doesn't even buy him a turn.
Nope, not at all. That is, well, it bought him 1 turn. It bought him this turn.
Yeah, and this just shows that transformed Adanto from earlier doing so much work. Kane's going to check to make sure there's no Chemist's Insights left in the yard. I don't believe there are. He picks up the cards. Jacob Hage gets game 1.
That was a show of exactly why control decks being tuned to play against specific decks is so important.
Look, and I love that spot. We had a turn in the game where Kane was at 7 and Hage had 6 power of attackers. I think a lot of players would want to put your opponent to 1 there, but he wisely shows that he's willing to give up those points to take Teferi off the board, and that makes all the difference.
Exactly. You want to make sure your opponent doesn't have that card advantage engine in order to keep themselves in the game. There's a chance that if Kane is able to just keep drawing extra cards over time, then those vampire tokens aren't going to be enough. But in a case like that where Kane is having to continually commit mana into drawing more cards and then also answer things and just gain life. We saw that absorb on his own Thought Erasure. You're going to put them in those kinds of positions if you just keep their card advantage engines checked.
So we go to the sideboards here. Jacob Hage up a game. Now, over on the modern seat, Evan Whitehouse looks like he took game 1 over Ryan Overturf. So 1-1 apiece on different matches. We'll look over at these sideboards. Jacob winning game 1 feels so good here for him.
Oh, absolutely. And here, we saw exactly what Hagen needed to happen there, where Kane drew just a few too many spells that are basically good against the grindy decks, and Hagen had a start that let him flip Legions, or transform Legion's Landing ASAP.
So coming up in a month, Star City Games has the Star City Games Regional Championships. These are modern tournaments happening all around the country. So we have 12 different regional championships around the country. You see the list of them here. Find one in your area. Now, what can you get for these? These do contribute SCG points. They help you get to invitationals, get some buys here on an SCG weekend. So the top... Everybody gets points for playing, and additional points for the top 64, including a full 20 points to the winner, the big part of the tour. That's almost as much as winning an Open.
Exactly. See, here's the thing. These points add up over time. Especially as early in the year as we are, this is the situation where we end up with points being by such small margins. People are, say, looking just outside of the top 32 by 1-2 points. Playing in this and even just top 64ing an event with 200-300 people, not as difficult as it sounds, and it can make such a huge difference when you come and play at one of the open events on the SCG Tour.
And there's more here. We have 5K in prizes for the event, and also the top 8 get invites to the Invitational at SCGCon in June. So you can find that out. Now, on top of that, everybody who shows up will get some tokens here. It's our most recent Invitational champion. That's Andrew Jessup, his Monarch token. We also have the 4/4 Flying Angel token being given away to all competitors.
Is this the best Invitational token of all time?
It's up there.
It's a player. It's in the conversation. I have some friends that have won Invitationals, and I'm happy for them, but have you seen this thing?
Yeah, you can get one this weekend. Not this weekend. And on the regionals weekend, that's early March. Also, the first 200 players to register for the event will get a copy of the Great Godspeed playmat. This one is given out, and a lot of stores do have pre-registration. So starcitygames.com/regionals, make sure you get yours all lined up.
And you really want to jump on that as soon as possible. There are shops I've been to where...
these do go over 200 players.
Exactly. People are excited to play in these. They're great events. They're a lot of fun. And people love the mats.
So looking at some sideboards here, Kane Rianhard going to have to win both postboard games. Now, deck lists are face-up. So he knows that Hagen will have cards like Negate, Spell Pierce, possibly Disdainful Stroke. Let's look at his sideboarding options.
So this is a spot where Hagen just has so many anti-spell cards to be able to bring in.
Right.
And a lot of the matchups we've seen before, you can't afford to just overload on those effects because you'll quote-unquote get got by Thief of Sanity. But Thief of Sanity isn't quite as good
here, right?
Right. You're not very excited to see something like Legion's Landing in your deck that has 5 creatures, 8 creatures in the entire 75.
So because Kane... Well, first of all, Thief of Sanity, we don't think it comes in here. And because it doesn't come in here, Hagen can just board in all the blue cards.
Exactly. Hagen is just able to bring in Spell Pierce, Negate, Disdainful Stroke, turn something into an island. And Ajani is another card that just, it's able to grind through whatever Kane is doing. It's a different kind of permanent that's taxing the kinds of answers that Kane has to have. It's stretching those Vraska's Contempts are even thinner, and they're already pretty taxed.
So the cards I'm looking for then out of Reinhardt's matchup deck are things like Hostage Taker, looks great.
Yes.
Basilica Bellhaunt, how do you feel about that? I know it's normally for the mono red decks, but does it play here?
Technically. So that's a situation where you're not very happy about having it in your deck. It's a little bit underwhelming. And it's not very hard if you just leave the opponent's creatures unchecked for them to end up having 4 power or being evasive in the case of, say, Skymarch Aspirant. But there are a lot of situations where it ends up being good enough to block, say, an Adanto Vanguard if you're able to keep their Anthem effects in check. Or just something to block all of the Vampire tokens that Adanto, the first fort, starts to churn out tokens.
All right, game number 2 here, Reinhard on the play. Now, we do have our first match update in the top 8. That has to do with the match that's going to... We do know the winner of this will play against the team of Ryan Frainer, Gerard Fabiano, and Matt Tumovich. They were winners in the 3-6 match, and they are into the semifinals. Also, we have another team. The Big Mana team is not going to make it as they were taken down in the quarterfinals. So we have the team of Joshua Everly, Jeff Carr, and Ian Bosley into the top 4. Meantime, some lands for Kane to start out. Cast Down took care of Skymarcher Aspirant. Hagen has 2 threats, but they are both Snubhorn Sentries.
Can we call them threats? Be honest.
You know, they'll grow into one.
They're just out here doing their best, really.
They earned a Kaya's Wrath.
That's a 2
All right.
for 1.
And it got, so what's the better part, that you're sweeping away a board of 2 1-3s, or that Hagen's countering the sweeper?
Hey, they were 0-3s and will be
0-3s,
treated as
right.
such.
0 power, I better Wrath. No, you better not Wrath. And that's because this follow-up of Ajani there's the 1, making them 1-4s, swings in for 2.
They're just out there doing their best.
Shock of Godless Shrine for Rianhard. Casts Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Pluses to draw a card. Untaps there. I believe that Rianhard has another Kaya's Wrath.
Right, and without some help, these sentries aren't going to be enough to kill this Teferi this turn.
Okay.
Which means that Rianhard is basically looking to develop a Teferi, sweep the board
Yeah.
away, and then ride that Teferi.
Right, he wants the Teferi to take 4, Kaya's Wrath plus, everything's okay. Now, Conclave Tribunal in Hagen's hand is going to mess that up.
That is incredible here. So this is a spot where Rianhard is likely looking to board out the negate he had in his main deck, and that's the only card that could answer this for 2 mana.
Right, he can't do much to save the Planeswalker here. Now, remainder of cards in Rianhard's hand. Cast down Kaya's Wrath, Hostage Taker. Might be good enough on their own.
Hostage Taker plays.
Yeah. Tribunal takes care of the Hero of Dominaria. An attack for
Count
4,
it.
count it, 9 permanents. No City's Blessing just yet.
We're getting so close here. There's a spot where it may have been a little bit better to minus the Ajani on this Sky March Aspirant in order to get the City's Blessing, but
interesting.
Hagen may also just be interested in getting this Ajani up to its ultimate. You think 1 lifelink token is good?
Right.
Try 3 lifelink tokens a turn forever.
I mean, we saw how good Adanto was. I can't imagine Ajani is an easy card for Kane to deal with. Now his play will be Hostage Taker. You'll take the Snubhorn Sentry hostage and immediately cast it.
And you know, with all the lands that Esper plays, it would be surprising if this just ended up being a 3/3 pretty quickly.
Yeah, Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, ultimates on 7. So that makes sense that Jacob was plussing it to hope to get to that point, but he's still a bit off. Or maybe not. Okay. So
give it a second.
Right? Conclave Tribunal takes care of Hostage Taker. Ajani can plus to 7. And now he's going to try to go for the ultimate. And I don't know that Kane has an answer. He has a sweeper.
You have a Vraska's Contempt right now?
Can he? What if he makes 3 permanents? That would work. I don't think he can make 3 permanents. Now he's checking that ultimate saying, oh no, oh no.
Oh, whenever you have a Planeswalker with several counters and you got a reader, you know you've won.
Oh yeah. What do I have to beat? He gets an emblem with at the beginning of each end step, he'll get 3 1/1 cat creature tokens with lifelink.
Emblem time.
Yeah, this is going to be big. Now, Basilica Bellhunt, there was a creature in play, but we see an emblem, and how about Penniless Marshal to go with the emblem?
How about 3 2/2s a turn? How do you feel about that one? Hey, this is about to be the 10th permanent. That would have been...
Yeah, okay, here's City's Blessing.
That would have been good enough last turn, Matthias.
So Kane's going to have to win through this. That's a tall order. Now, we do have our first match result. On the modern table, Evan Whitehouse is a 2-0 winner of his match over Ryan Overturf. But he's going to need help from one of his teammates, and Kane is in a tough spot facing down this Ajani emblem.
I've got to break the fourth wall for a second.
All right.
Do you think we have enough cats?
How many?
How many cats
did we bring?
do you think we have in the feature match area? Is it 15?
I hope it's a multiple of 3.
I hope. Oh my gosh!
I don't think there's 7.
If they
there's
go,
7
oh
cats.
no, we brought 10 cats.
And a swing in with the cat tokens.
Oh, we did lose 2 of them.
To City's
Adding
Blessing?
multiples of 3.
Yeah.
This could end up being 10.
They're so expendable. How many cats are going to hit the graveyard this game? It's already 2.
About 2 a turn.
Oh, man. This is the saddest. Here is Hostage Taker from Kane. He's going to take the Penniless Marshal, cast the Penniless Marshal. All this value stuff is
This might
good.
actually turn things.
Well, the cats have lifelink. We'll see.
Yeah.
Here's a swing for 6. Hagen's down to 20.
Hey, that is a swing for 8.
Oh, right, Benelish Marshall. It's a swing for 8. Hagen's down to 18.
All your marshals are belong to us.
Oh man, that's an
Oh.
oldie.
How do you feel about Adonto, the first fort, joining things?
Now it's 4 a turn.
This is close.
Transforms into Adonto, the first fort, a swing for 4 cats.
So
2 more hitting the graveyard. That
if you're
keeping
in
track, that's up to
Rianhard's
4.
seat, you're kind of thinking to yourself at this point, okay, so later at dinner, I want to tell my friends how I beat this absurd battlefield. How does that story sound? What does it look like?
How do I beat this?
You're thinking
Yeah.
of the absurd circumstances that lead to you winning this game.
You've got me looking. Now I'm
Chemistry's
looking at the
Insight's likely where
sideboard.
it starts. This is just
Where does it
extra
end,
cards.
though?
A fine question.
I'm looking at the board.
A second Kaya's Wrath is good.
He needs Ethereal Absolution, but he's not playing it. That would work.
That would be hot.
I'm trying to think of cards in Esper that deal with this, just as a whole. You know, cards in Standard that can win from here.
Ooh, Alpha.
And he's going to try. Right, so right now he has to race. I don't think his deck has any other way to get through this.
Yeah, your goal at this point is effectively saying, I hope that these are better than 1/1s
Right.
and that they can beat them.
The hard part, as you see an attack here, is going to be that lifelink, right?
Oh, exactly. It's very unlikely that you actually just put an effective clock on Hagen here. You know, do you think Chromium is still in Kane's deck? I don't.
Right, that swing puts Hagen down to 11. It is an attack, though, and he'll gain 5, dealing 5. Kane's down to 11. 3 more blockers, 4 more once you add an Adonto.
Oh, good. Let's just gain 7 life. That's just a thing we're going to do this combat.
6 cats are down over the course of the game.
I mean, everybody wants to be a
Yeah.
cat. Oh, we've had to bust out the other cat
Ooh.
tokens.
Now they're joining in. Those are Regal Caracals, I think. All the cats.
Meow.
All the cats are invited to this party.
Everybody wants to be a cat.
Even these vampires.
Cat's the only cat who knows how to swing.
Is that also an Aristocats song?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's all been the same song.
It sounds the same song. I only know the refrain. I like that we're going into the verses now.
I have an Aristocats T-shirt. Oh no, that's not true. My sister has an Aristocats T-shirt. I gave it to her for Christmas, and it sat in my room for 3 months because I saw it and it sat there on my shelf.
Kane is drawing a lot of cards here. But
That's
I
the
don't
start to
know.
winning this. You just need, every single creature in your deck on the battlefield in order to win.
And then when you have Takaya's Wrath the battlefield anyway, you'll gain some life.
Well, we don't talk about that. Here's
Look,
the
that
point.
mode of Kaya's Wrath is not very often used.
Here's the point where you likely just have to attack with absolutely everything.
Are you Kaya's Wrathing post-combat?
Or mortifying a creature if
Oh.
Hagen goes for the triple block on Benelish Marshall. That's a way you actually get some damage in here.
Okay.
You laugh. I'm not kidding.
I mean, you can mortify either of these Conclave Tribunals. You can
That's
get
a
back
fair
something,
point.
but I don't know where we go from there, but it's a play.
Oh, but you get back a hostage taker.
Or
Okay.
Teferi. He'll get Teferi back from the Conclave. Teferi's going to plus to draw a card. He's not
Maybe.
sure.
It could minus on the tribunal.
Okay, and get back the hostage taker.
Right, that's just another body. So you exile one of these creatures and then attack with everything.
This is a situation where I think if Kane's deck was playing a copy of Settle the Wreckage, he might be able to do some work.
Right. Just
he's
put
not.
every single land in Hagen's deck onto the battlefield.
Yeah, it would stop Hagen from being able to just do what he's doing by bullying and swinging the team every turn.
Exactly.
Now, the problem is there are no Settle the Wreckages, and in the top 8 matches, deck lists are face up. So Hagen has no fear.
Exactly. Hagen knows that that's just not ever going to come. Oh, and it looks like Hagen has a Disdainful Stroke in his hand. Oh. So when we say this is over, this is over.
What is he
Maybe
looking?
not.
What's the card he wants to Disdainful Stroke?
anything that matters, which is to say
But what is
nothing.
that? Okay.
So we're at the point where if Kane can't attack anymore, his gambit here is that Hage makes a bad attack, loses a ton of his battlefield, which lets Kane swing with his entire board, or his entire side of the battlefield, and actually get enough damage in to win on the counter strike. So you attack everything attacks, you block 5 things, take 4 of them, go to 7, and then Jacob will go up to exactly 7 creatures the following turn. You minus Teferi on this Conclave Tribunal, which gets back a hostage taker,
try to make an
exiles
alpha
a blocker, and then you mortify another blocker, and then you attack with everything that
So
turn.
that's still, for all that to work, Jacob has to make a poor attack, right?
Listen, you play to your outs.
Yeah.
What do you can't win if Jacob just sits there, and you can't just keep trading blows like that because you're not actually making any headway. So there's a point where you don't like playing to your opponent's mistakes, but if that's your out, that's your out.
I mean, that maybe is only out. He's going to look for something else, though. Kane plussing the Teferi. Drawing another card. I mean, if he gets up to Teferi Emblem, I don't know if that's good enough,
I mean,
but
that deals
it's
with
interesting.
1 cat a turn, so that's nothing.
I bet he can get 2 cats a turn. He can draw some cards. He'll
How many?
find another Teferi by then. I don't know. This is interesting. If you get to the competing emblems, at the very least, Teferi ticking toward 8 might push Jacob to attack.
It's really hard to say. So the big thing here is just that there are only so many cards in Rianhard's deck. I know that sounds
to reset.
silly.
No, I mean, it makes sense. But here's the board's gotten big enough that Kane is going to reset with Kaya's Wrath, and now Jacob has to decide whether this is good enough to earn the disdainful stroke. Is he talking with teammate Ryan Overturf here about it? And they decide it's not. They bin all the creatures. Kane will gain 5. Kaya's Wrath gains life equal to the number of your own creatures it destroys.
So the benefit here is that Hagen still is able to just take a turn off of the Teferi.
Yeah, and Kane's going to need the comeback here because on our legacy table, 2-0, Lynn is your winner with Dimir Shadow. So if Hagen can get this game, they will be on to the semifinals. I like this from Kane, though. If he's going to win, he figures it starts with a Teferi emblem, so this board sweep, when he has it, he's going to be trying to make and protect this Teferi. Now, the 1-1 hitting it down to 5 is a tough spot.
See, and this is the issue with Adanto, is it's not literally making a haste creature every turn, but basically the issue is these sorcery speed sweepers are never going to make it to where there isn't something that can attack Teferi.
So now Jacob's going to refill the board with all the cards he wasn't casting. So that's going to be History of Benalia and Dauntless Bodyguard. And now 3 cats.
Yeah, and here's the issue. We had a Wrath last turn, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 power on the battlefield.
Right. I mean, Jacob's playing this really well by letting that happen and not committing any more threats when he had the emblem. That allows him to reload this board immediately.
Oh, absolutely. Hagen's no slouch here. I've heard he's pretty good at and has experience with decks such as humans.
A drawn card here from Kane. Finds a copy of Absorb. And it's going to be another Kaya's Wrath. This is the 3rd one in his deck. It's important in the kind of this matchup to actually keep track of those. This is the 3rd one he's cast.
Exactly. We only have 1 more. 1 more.
1 more? Okay. Dauntless Bodyguard protects the 2/2 token. And they pass. Sister Benalia making another knight. Still feel, as long as Hagen can pressure the Teferi, it still feels like I don't see how Kane's going to pull ahead here.
Yeah, at this point, here's the thing. Kane's resources are limited to the number of cards that he has, and Hagen doesn't have that restriction. He's getting 3 free resources just that do not count as cards, do not cost him cards at all. They are just being fabricated from nothing.
Absorb counters Hunted Witness. Now, one way that Kane can do, I'm looking at the list, in theory, he can counter race with Chromium. Thought Erasure taking care of that disdainful stroke. But that would mean, the issue I have with that is I'm not sure that Kane has kept Chromium in this matchup, because typically he won't.
Right, that's just not a card that's necessarily very good here, and there's even a point where how many of these lifelink cats can you deal with for Chromium to actually seal the deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear if Chromium would win. It would give him an avenue to play toward, but a lot of times in these matchups, you don't think, how do I win post a Johnny emblem? You think, okay, well, I try to not let that happen.
Yeah, this is the nightmare scenario for Rianhard.
Because as it is, he's buying time. He's treading water, but without a way to turn the corner. Something like Chromium, eventually, what either will happen is Kane will get attacked by cats, or he'll actually just mill out. I mean, we mentioned only one Kaya's Wrath left. A couple Teferis left. He can draw cards, but if he's not drawing to anything, he'll eventually run out of cards to draw.
Exactly. He is very limited by the number of cards in his deck, and that's a funny thing to say, but if you don't just have more things in your deck, then that's going to end up holding you.
And Jacob, what I like here is he goes to work by attacking full every turn, gaining, keeping his life total high. This attack takes care of Teferi.
Yeah, worst case scenario, you lose a token, which you're about to just restock with 3 more of them.
Yeah, Jacob will add 3 more cats. We have our third semifinalist. That's the Team Amulet taking down the 1 seed. So Dilks, Ayers, and Magalhaes win the rematch. They are on to the semis.
That's an upset.
That's an upset, for sure. They are on to face, next round, the team of Everly, Carr, and Bosley. Big attack here from Hagen. Basilica Bellhunt can block a creature, but that's not going to do much.
Yeah, and I believe that there is the 4th Kaya's Wrath hiding out in Rianhard's hand, but that's the last one, and from there, it feels like it's just a matter of time.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's a great card to have, but the concern is that's the last one.
Exactly. You don't actually have that many sweepers in your deck anymore.
And it's just been hard. The way that Kane sideboards, he's not set up to play this match. He doesn't have the Chromium. The search for Azcantas at times too usually come out in this matchup as well. And you're seeing, that coming into play. As there's the last Kaya's Wrath.
Again, struggling to get all the cards off the battlefield. All of the tokens off the battlefield. Those are not cards.
They're not cards,
excuse
right.
me. How could I?
1-1 swinging back in. There are no more sweepers left in Reinhardt's deck.
And at this point, Hagen makes 3 more tokens, and Rianhard doesn't have any more sweepers or creatures left in his deck. It's hard to imagine
Vanguard.
That the game's going to continue more than another turn or 2.
Gold card here drawn by Kane. It might be one of those Thought Erasures.
Mortify?
Okay, looks like you're right. It's Mortify. So you can get the Hostage Taker back, take Adanto Vanguard hostage, cast it, and block.
Token.
Yeah. And pay 4 life to not lose the Vanguard. I don't want...
What?
Yeah. It's the emblem, and I think what I'm thinking here is with the way Esper controls sideboards, it feels like the Ajani emblem is not beatable in the long term. Maybe if you have your opponent in a board spot where they're low on life and they're really counting on this emblem to get them back in it, maybe you can get them in 2 turns, but not like this.
Chromium does race it over the course of a couple of turns.
Yeah,
right. It'll deal 14, and then they'll gain 3, so you're able to net, say, 11 in that exchange. And if you're ahead on this, you could maybe even 7 them in and get the full 18 in or 21 rather, from 3 attacks.
Right. Yeah, you could do that. You could, with some moment of cravings, deny just enough lifelink to get Chromium across the finish line. But Chromium's not in this matchup.
Right. That's just, you're never going to be anywhere close to it if you're at parity.
All right. So here's my question, Emma. If he played 1 copy of Clear the Mind in his deck, do you think he could win this by milling Hagen?
Matthias, I'm not playing this game with you. Call the match.
And we will call the match. Kane Rianhard picks up the cards. And it's going to be the team of Liz Lynn, Ryan Overturf, and Jacob Hagen on to the semifinals there. Azorius Aggro behind Ajani picking